Thank you for joining us for this session. So my name is Sue Jackson and I'm from the County Council. The aim of this session is to give you a bit of background on some proposed improvements we're looking at for the southern section of the A10 in the Cheshunt area and on the surrounding roads. This is a joint project between ourselves at the County Council, Broxbourne Borough Council, and also we've got technical support through our consultants WSP, who've been helping us with the sort of design development work and the business case development. So just in terms of today's session, myself and Douglas Cooper from Broxbourne will give you a bit of a background on the project itself, project introduction, just to sort of go over sort of why the A10, why we're looking at things now. We'll then hand over to Graham Higgins from our WSP design team, who will sort of give you a bit of a summary of what's proposed at each location using the online story map resource. Then Anna Collins from our WSP engagement team will sort of talk about this current exercise of sort of public consultation engagement and how you can get involved and feedback your comments. We have had a couple of sort of online sessions with the community where we sort of they asked a number of questions. What we're doing is we're pulling together a response on those, and those will be put on the website as sort of frequently asked questions. And then we'll finish off with a sort of next steps section. So what happens, you know, now over the next couple of years. So what I wanted to reiterate is this project's at an early stage. So nothing is kind of set in stone as yet, but what we wanted, and it will be subject to securing funding from the Department for Transport and others before it can go ahead. But what we wanted to do at this stage is to kind of give you, I suppose, the heads up on what we're planning, to sort of raise awareness of what we're planning in the area, and also you know, sort of get your initial feedback, sort of understand if there's any sort of particular local concerns at this point, or things that we need to take into account. So why the A10 and why we're doing it now? Well, we're the Highways Authority, the County Council, so we're responsible for owning and maintaining the A10. It's one of the key roads in our county, so it's one of our most sort of heavily trafficked roads. It carries around sort of 45,000 vehicles on an average day. It's also a key strategic route, so it obviously links sort of Broxbourne and sort of North and East Hertfordshire with the M25 and North and East London, and also sort of Cambridge and the area beyond. The government recognise the importance of this route, so they've designated it as something called part of their major road network. That's almost like just the one level below the sort of motorway network, and that's important because actually they've got some specific funding to help with improvements to this major road network. So we've got kind of a unique opportunity now to sort of actually get some central government funding for, you know, to make some improvements on the A10. It's and this funding is nothing to do with sort of our core council budgets that cover things like sort of potholes or anything like that. So it's additional funding that we can bid for because of the importance of the A10. I think the other thing we recognise is there's current problems. So the three junctions at the southern end in Cheshunt, Lieutenant Ellis Way Junction, the College Road Junction and the Church Lane Junction, they're all defined congestion hotspots. So there's already sort of frequent sort of queues and delays at those locations. That means that there's unreliable journey times along this bottom stretch of the A10, and that in turn encourages kind of traffic that should be on the A10 to sort of start rat running on some of the more local routes. Another key issue we've got is it sort of the A10 cuts through the middle of the borough of Broxbourne, so it effectively sort of separates and segregates the sort of a lot of the housing areas sort of on the western side from the sort of the stations, the shops, the other facilities on the eastern side, and it's very difficult to get across the A10, particularly if you're trying to sort of walk or cycle at the moment. So it's a real kind of severance. So we recognise there's a balance for improving things for drivers. You know, clearly there's a need to kind of make journey times as you're going up and down the A10 more reliable and reduce delays. We don't want to make it too good because we don't want to make, you know, suck traffic in from the M11 A1 corridors. So there's a balance between that and also sort of making sure we address this problem of sort of trying to move around in the rest of the borough. So particularly this sort of east-west severance and trying to get across the A10. So we're looking at a kind of a balanced approach, really. So I've sort of set out why the current issues on the A10. So I'm going to hand over now to Douglas Cooper from Broxbourne, who's going to kind of set out actually some of the challenges that will come in the future. So.
My name is Douglas Cooper. I'm head of the Broxbourne Development Programme, and that programme involves the coordination of the major developments within the borough over the next 10 to 15 years. Most of those developments have come forward through allocations within the Broxbourne local plan, which was adopted by Broxbourne Council in 2020. Those developments include the major employment schemes that are currently being built at the entrance to the borough, just to the north of the junction 25 of the M25, and in particular Sunset Studios. That development and others are making contributions to the A10 MRN scheme. As well as those developments further up the A10, we have the major Brookfield scheme. Brookfield is planned to be a town centre, combining and extending the existing Brookfield Centre and the Brookfield Retail Park, and allied to that will be Brookfield Garden Village, new residential community of around about 5,000 people. To the west of the A10, we have another 1,000 houses being built in the Rosedale area between Rosedale and Goffsoak. And to the east of the A10, we have the Cheshunt Lakeside development currently being built to the north of Cheshunt Station. And again, that will bring about another 5,000 residents into the borough. So all these jobs and residents will put pressure, additional pressure onto the A10 and the surrounding road network. So as part of the local plan, the council, in collaboration with Hertfordshire County Council, produced a document called the Broxbourne Transport Strategy. That looked at all modes of transport, not just roads and highways, but also buses, trains and walking and cycling. And that proposed a number of measures, and one of the priorities within those measures was, of course, the A10. Both those documents were produced at around the same time that the government launched the major roads network, and initial feelers were put out to the government for the A10 to be an early project within the implementation of that network. That in turn led to the two councils working together to produce the proposals that you are now being presented with. Thank you very much.
As Douglas sort of reiterated, so the Broxbourne Transport Strategy that was done as part of their local plan set out the need for junction improvements on the southern section of the A10, along with sort of wider transport improvements. What we've done since then is we've undertaken further development of the proposals to make sure everyone benefits from the changes, including people walking and cycling. Now that's very much in line with our key transport sort of strategy in the county, our local transport plan that has a key policy that sort of sets out in all the schemes we do, in all the strategies we develop, that we take account of sort of vulnerable road users, so that's people walking and cycling, and public transport users, as well as people sort of driving around the area. We also need to sort of demonstrate we're taking into account the needs of all users to access the government funding. That's something we need to kind of, show the Department for Transport that we're doing. The need for improvements to the junctions, along with walking and cycling improvements in the wider area, is also set out in our local transport strategy document. That's called the South East Hertfordshire Growth and Transport Plan, and it covers the sort of Broxbourne area as well as East Herts. And Broxbourne's own local cycling walking infrastructure plan also identifies a number of routes where there are suggested improvements need to be made to make it easier to sort of walk and cycle in the area. So I think the key message is there's a balance to be made with what we're proposing. So yes, one of the key focuses of the proposals is to kind of improve the junctions on the A10, to kind of, reduce sort of delays, make journey times more reliable for drivers. But at the same time, we need to make sure that we're making the most of opportunities with these sort of scheme designs to make it easier and safer for people to walk and cycle in the area. So just wanted to kind of finish with sort of the aims of the project. So we've heard that there's a lot of housing and employment growth coming in the area. So one of the key aims is to make sure we've got a transport network that's able to accommodate the additional people who want to sort of travel around the area. So to ensure that the transport network is ready for the future. I said earlier, there's a problem with unreliable journey times and queues and delays at the sort of southern end of the A10. So another key aim is to kind of make journeys more reliable. So to improve that journey time reliability so that people kind of have more confidence in how long it will take them to travel along this stretch of the A10. Through doing that, that should sort of encourage more of the longer distance through traffic to stay on the A10. So reducing that local rat running onto the sort of more local roads. I think we sort of heard earlier that the A10 kind of, acts as a severance really between the western and eastern parts of the borough. There's quite a high level of car use for very short journeys at the moment. So one of the kind of key aims of the project is to kind of make improvements that encourage people to walk and cycle for those sort of shorter local journeys where there's that opportunity. By sort of improving vehicle throughput and also sort of hopefully some people shifting to walking cycling for those very short sort of journeys, hopefully that should sort of lead to an improvement of air quality, which is a particular issue on the stretch between sort of College Road and Church Lane. And generally, we're sort of looking for the package of measures to sort of really make it easier to travel across the borough, not just by car, but also for walking and cycling and sort of public transport for those sort of shorter journeys. So I'm now going to hand over to Graham Higgins from our design team, who's going to sort of take you through a bit of a summary of what's proposed at each location. As I said earlier, we are at a very early stage. We're sort of using this as an opportunity to get your feedback on our proposals and to kind of understand, if there's any particular local issues or concerns that we need to take into account in our ongoing designs. Thank you.
I'm Graham Higgins and I'll be explaining the highway improvement measures that we're proposing to introduce in this scheme. As noted in the consultation material, the improvements are centred on 3 core junctions on the A10 itself and a number of complementary measures on roads to the east and west. The 3 junctions that we're proposing to improve are Church Lane, College Road and Lieutenant Ellis Way, Winston Churchill Way. I'll describe the proposals at each of those junctions in turn, starting with Church Lane, which is the furthest north, and then I'll move south. At Church Lane, there's an existing pedestrian crossing on the A10 on the north side of the junction, but no other formal crossing points for the A10 or for Church Lane, which makes it unattractive for people to cross the road at the junction. We're proposing to introduce push-button operated crossing points on each arm of the junction to make it safer for people to cross the road. As well as the new crossings, we're proposing to install new cycle lanes on Church Lane on the approaches to the junction. These lanes will include dedicated stopping areas where people cycling can wait at the traffic signals ahead of the stop line for other traffic. This will make it safer for people to cycle across the busy junction and encourage more people to cycle in the area. Some changes need to be made to the turning movements at the junction to reduce delays and to improve safety. It's proposed that right turn movements from both sides of Church Lane onto the A10 would be stopped, and this would help cut down on waiting times for vehicles on Church Lane and let more vehicles pass through on the A10 itself. We're not proposing to change the right turn movements from the A10, so the only right turn allowed would be from the A10 southbound onto Church Lane West, as is the case with the existing layout. Other alternative arrangements, such as maintaining the right turns from Church Lane and allowing traffic on each Church Lane approach to run on separate signal stages, have been considered, but this would reduce the time available for the A10 traffic to flow through the junction and increase overall delays and queuing at the junction compared with the current situation. So the layout that we're proposing supports the commitments set out in Broxbourne's local cycling and walking infrastructure plan. The alternative routes for traffic on Church Lane west of the junction wanting to travel south down the A10 would be to use the B156 Church Gate and join the A10 southbound at the College Road junction. So here's Church Gate Road here and linking into College Road. Traffic on the east side of Church Lane wanting to head north up the A10 would then generally use the High Street. So if I find that on the map, so traffic wanting to head north up the A10 would then use the High Street, Cheshunt Wash, and continue north to join the A10 at the Turnford interchange, the northbound exit, northbound entry slip, as shown on the map. We have considered more radical solutions that would provide even greater benefits for active travel, i.e. that's people wishing to walk or cycle, but we felt that they would be too detrimental to motorists. So we've sought to provide a solution that reflects the needs of both motorists and active travel users. Moving now on to College Road. So this is the next junction that you come to as you head south. The first thing to note here is that all existing traffic movements would be maintained under the proposed layout. At College Road, there's an existing pedestrian footbridge, but there are no other ground level controlled crossings at the junction. There is, however, an informal crossing point on the east side of the junction where people can cross the road at the appropriate time when the relevant traffic signals are on their red phase, but nothing more formal. As part of the proposal, we're looking to install new pedestrian crossings with push button operation on both the north and east sides of the junction to help people to cross the A10 and College Road. It's worth mentioning that the footbridge is not being upgraded as part of this set of proposals due to funding availability and space constraints. The configuration of traffic lanes on the A10 southbound as you approach the junction would be amended to improve the arrangements for traffic turning right and left onto College Road, but 2 lanes would continue through the junction in both directions, as is the case currently. As you continue south, you come to the Lieutenant Ellis Way junction off to the west and Winston Church Way off to the east. Now, this roundabout is currently a conventional type of roundabout without traffic signals. It has a controlled crossing for people to cross the Winston Churchill Way arm of the junction, but nothing more formal than that. And the roundabout currently suffers from congestion and is predicted to become even more congested in future with the housing and business growth that is planned. We've considered a number of options for this junction, and what we're proposing is what's called a cut-through type roundabout, sometimes referred to as a through-about or hamburger junction, which is shown on this visualization. So if I enlarge that, that will give us a better idea of what we're proposing. So in this type of arrangement, traffic heading north or south on the A10 is able to travel on lanes constructed within the central island of the roundabout, which provides a shorter and more direct route. This solution has been implemented on a number of schemes in the country over recent years, a local example being on the A414 in Harlow at the junction with the A1169. This proposal requires traffic signals to be installed around the roundabout circulatory carriageway and also to control traffic that flows north-south. We also considered signalising the existing roundabout, but that didn't improve the capacity sufficiently. And we also appraised installing a new grade separated junction with the A10 passing over or under the adjoining roads, but that was considered to be too costly and would be too complex to construct, and also disruptive potentially to road users during the construction process. So that option has been discounted. It's important for drivers to be in the correct lane for their destination when using this roundabout, even more so than on a conventional roundabout, and there will be signs and road markings to advise drivers of the correct lane to be in. Unlike on a conventional roundabout, if drivers want to take the third exit when heading north, they will need to be in the left-hand lane to travel around the circulatory, which is similar to the path that drivers would have to take if the junction were grade separated, with one of the routes passing under the other. If drivers are in one of the outer lanes when approaching the roundabout from the north or south, they will be committed to going straight ahead, as you can see in the visualization. We anticipate that it will take time for drivers to familiarise themselves with the new arrangement, and signs will be installed to advise of the new layout in place. We'll also be seeking early engagement with a civil engineering contractor when it comes to constructing the cut-through roundabout, so that the construction is carried out in an efficient manner, and that also applies to construction of other elements of the scheme. We're not proposing any significant changes to the road layout between each of the three junctions, as no additional capacity is needed on the A10. So moving on then to look at the complementary measures. So the scheme also includes new and improved walking and cycling routes across Cheshunt that we're referring to as complementary measures. Routes are planned along Church Lane and College Road and between Theobald's Lane and Albury Walk. A new route is also planned alongside the A10 between Church Lane and Halfhide Lane, and I'll now describe these in a bit more detail. So at Church Lane East, we're proposing to improve the footways to make it easier for people wanting to cross the various side roads. We'll also be looking to include features that reduce vehicle speeds on Church Lane to make it a safer environment for those who want to cycle. We're also planning to provide new pedestrian crossings on all arms of the Church Lane High Street junction, which is this junction here, along with improvements for people cycling. On Church Lane to the west of the A10, we're planning to install new zebra crossings at the roundabout between Church Lane and Flamstead End Road, which is here. And this should reduce the traffic speeds in this area and allow people to cross the road safely. The bus stop that's currently located outside the Freemasons pub would be moved slightly to enable the introduction of safer crossing points at the Church Lane roundabout. We're also planning to introduce a new shared use path. So that's shared use for people walking and cycling north of Church Lane along the eastern side of the A10 as far as Anchor Close, at which point people cycling would be routed towards quieter roads, including Anchor Close and Beltona Gardens, before connecting to Halfhide Lane. We're also planning to signpost Kilsmore Lane here, which runs parallel to Church Lane, as an alternative quieter route for cyclists. And we're considering converting the mini roundabout at the junction of High Street and Blindman's Lane, which is this junction here, into a safer T-junction with raised zebra crossings on all sides. Moving now to College Road. East of the A10, we're looking to improve the footways, and again making it easier for people to cross the various side roads, and additionally looking to include features to reduce vehicle speeds on the road, including road narrowing and other traffic calming measures to make it a safer environment for people cycling on this stretch of College Road. On the west side of College Road. Again, we're looking to make improvements to better connect the route from the A10 with the new river path, which is shown in pink, including new crossings and sections of shared use footway, making it safer for people walking and cycling. Looking at the new north-south cycle route on the eastern side of the A10, at the moment there's an existing shared use path that runs all the way from the M25 to the Paul Cully Bridge, but nothing, no formal cycling facilities north to College Road. We're also constrained by the existing mature trees that are adjacent to the A10 southbound carriageway, and therefore we're proposing to improve an alternative route to the east that encourages more cycling, that takes in the Ride, Albury Walk and Theobald's Lane, which would then link to the new river path. This proposal would involve making Theobald's Lane an exit only onto the A10, except for people cycling, who would access a new contraflow cycle facility eastbound proposed on Theobald's Lane. And this layout would make it safer for people walking and cycling, as it would reduce conflict at the junction. It would also make the junction with the A10 safer, removing the risk of rear-end shunt collisions associated with vehicles having to slow down to make the tight turn into Theobald's Lane, and make the exit from Theobald's Lane easier onto the A10. The most direct route for traffic wishing to use Theobald's Lane coming down the A10 would be to continue south past the junction, turn left into Winston Churchill Way, then along the High Street and into Theobald's Lane from the east. As well as the measures described, we're also looking into ways of improving the existing uncontrolled crossing points of the A10 at the Churchfield Path linking onto Riverside Path, and the one north of Church Lane at Pine Close. And that takes us through the various measures proposed for the scheme and hopefully provides you with a better understanding of the project. And now back to Anna. Thanks very much.
Thanks so much, Graham. Look, so yeah, as Graham said, my name's Anna and I'm part of the engagement team supporting Hertfordshire on the A10 project. So before I run through, I guess, what this public engagement period has consisted of and what it means, we just want to go through, I guess, a bit of an overview of what does that mean for you, the public, or an interested stakeholder in these set of proposals. Next slide. So as part of this engagement exercise, we've looked at the type of people who live in the area, what forms of transport you might use, and how often you're likely to travel through these key junctions. So this information really, I guess, at the core of it will help us make better design decisions, but also will assist in our understanding of the outcomes from this period of community engagement, as well as the outcomes of our future public consultations. And hopefully it will help us improve how we communicate with you, the public, and how we are able to take on feedback and represent those in our business case. Next slide, please. So as part of this period, we've been we're towards the end of our 4-week public engagement period. So that's been running from Monday, the 22nd of January, and it will close on Monday, the 19th of February. I just want to assure everyone that by no means is this the only opportunity to comment on the proposals, and we'll have further consultation on the detailed designs towards the end of 2024. For those who might not have been able to, comment thus far, or you are thinking about it, we really do encourage people to continue to provide your thoughts and feedback right up until Monday the 19th at midday. I'm going to circle back on how you can do that, but first I might just pass back to Sue, who's going to kind of give you an understanding of what the next steps on this project are. So back to you, Sue.
Okay, thank you. So I think it's important to note that we're early on in the process and we've got a whole series of steps to go through before we finalise the design. So the next step so we're here at the kind of left-hand side, we're doing that early engagement to raise awareness of the scheme, get your initial feedback on it. What the other thing we started is to kind of look at sort of, you know, starting to refine the designs in a bit more detail. So some of the early work we're already doing is commissioning, for example, some additional traffic surveys, so we get a much better understanding of kind of, you know, vehicle behaviour at the 3 junctions, how long the queues are, how long it's taking vehicles to get through the junctions, how the traffic signals are operating at the moment, for example. We're also commissioning what we call topographic surveys to sort of help us with that detailed design, and undertaking some further modelling work as well to understand, you know, how the different the impact of traffic on the different designs. Sort of once that process will kind of, you know, go on throughout the rest of this year. And when we've got more refined designs, sort of probably around about autumn, we'll come back to you with further public consultation where we'll actually be in a position to sort of actually show you some more detailed designs of what we're proposing at each location. In parallel with that, we've got a whole sort of series of hoops to jump through with the Department of Transport. We need to prepare something called business cases to basically set out the case for funding, really. So what are the benefits of doing the scheme? Sort of, do they offer value for money? We need to go through a number of different stages. We've submitted something called the Strategic Outline Business Case, which is the first stage of that process, and we're currently answering some of the Department for Transport's questions on that. Then we need to produce what's called an outline business case, and finally a sort of a final business case submission in order to get the sort of funding. I anticipate that final business case submission will be sort of in early 2026, and then we're looking, assuming we get the kind of the funding approval, then we're looking at scheme delivery sort of over a couple of year period between sort of 2026 and 2028. So I think the sort of the headline is it's still a few years away from sort of construction. That'll be subject to, you know, getting the funding from the Department for Transport, and there'll be further opportunities for you to kind of see the more detailed designs and comment on those sort of later this year. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Sue. So as I mentioned before, look, there's still a number of ways, if you haven't already, to provide your feedback and ideas or thoughts on sort of what we've given you an overview on today. First and foremost, we'd really encourage people to fill out our online questionnaire. I'll talk about where you can also request or fill out a hard copy of those for if you prefer to fill it out in person or have limited internet access. Otherwise, our dedicated project email address is up there. We're also encouraging people to email through any core feedback that they have. Otherwise, we also have our standard sort of telephone line, which you can also reach a member of the team on. Next slide, please. So as I've mentioned before, as you can see on the screen there, we've got a number of key locations where you can access those hard copy surveys. So up the top there, Hertford and Broxbourne Council offices, as well as Goss Oak Library, Hoddesdon Library and Cheshunt Library as well. Next slide. And then I'd just like to say that these will also be permanent resources, our 2 sort of websites, story maps that we've shown up on the screen there, and we'll provide a hyperlink in the description of this video today. We'd really encourage people to refer to this as the key sort of resource to refer to when you need to access any information about the proposals, and we'll be continuing to update these as the project progresses. I think that's it from us today. Thank you for anyone watching at home, and thanks for all those who were also able to attend the information sessions. We look forward to working with you further and providing more information as we progress. Thank you.
Thank you.